So my name's Lyndsey and for the past 18 months or so, I've been working on a project called Commoning Voices. And a little bit of background on the project. I was involved with the very first training sessions that were run by Susan Cross from Telltale for the Our Past, Our Future project. And Susan was telling us all about interpretation and what we can do. And she told us a story about a project on Lindisfarne. And they went there to develop a visitor centre for the island. And she started by talking to the local people. And she talked to them about their island. And they told her all about the wonderful places to go and all the different things that you can see. And she went back to the project organisers and they said, well, why are you talking to them? She said, well, you know, it's their island. They said, oh, no, we want the visitor centre to be all about the birds. She said, no, it's their island. And the local people said, this is the first time anyone's ever really asked us about our island. Normally, all these visitors come for 3 months of the year, invade us, and then they all go away. And no one really takes any notice of us. And as I listened, I thought, I know a little bit about those feelings. And so I talked to Susan and we developed the project. And Commoning Voices is about that, is about talking to commoners about the forest that they know and that they love and learning from them. So a lot of what we heard this morning was about the importance of commoning. But we didn't hear a lot about commoners. Now, the system of commoning is really vital, and we know that it delivers so much. But commoners are people. I am a commoner. This is my family. So I've got Robert here, and just Millie and our little dog. They're having a conversation with a couple of visitors, saying, this is my favourite spot, we walk here every day. This is interpretation. This is sharing a love of the forest with visitors. The biggest question is, are commoners unappreciated or simply invisible? I think commoners feel both of those things, really. We've talked a lot about the bigger picture. I won't talk about the bigger picture now. So what we did was we started with some workshops for commoners. The first one was a group of young commoners sat around in our sitting room, and we started to talk about, what's important, what do you know? And at about 11 o'clock, I said, I think it's time to go. Once you get a group of commoners talking about the forest, you can't stop them. So then we had a workshop at the New Forest Centre, and again, it was a little more structured, and we talked about things like childhood, and we talked about the forest and people's memories. And what I did was I wrote down everything that people said. And we've taken their words, and we've created an exhibition which will open on Saturday at the New Forest Centre. And we've taken Sally Fear's pictures, and we've put those words together with the pictures so that we can tell our story of the forest and our story of commoning. Interpretation of commoning has been very formal in the forest in the past. It uses words like verderers. And when you talk to the general public, particularly beyond the forest, all of those words mean nothing. Even words that we think are absolutely commonplace, like prefixes and heifers, people don't get. And I've had to really, really unpick the way that I talk to people and how we communicate about the forest and about commoning. So we thought, how can we get commoners telling their story? And social media is the obvious example. So we managed to get a company called Social Jungle to come along and talk to us, and they're rural social media specialists. And they said, really, what we need to do is get commoners to know us, the general public to know us, to like us, and to trust us. And we can do that simply by telling the everyday, ordinary version of commoning, feeding the cows, carving a cow. All of those things are not newsworthy. They're not in the Lymington Times. And in fact, the press won't report them. They won't tell good news stories about commoning. I attended one of the National Park Days at Queen's House a couple of years ago, and I was there, primed with Clive's pictures of all the flora and fauna of the forest that really depend on commoning, and I was explaining to the owner of a bed and breakfast, you know, this is why commoning is important. And he looked at me and he said, well, you would say that, wouldn't you? And I was completely stumped. Well, yes, but I'm not making it up. And he completely didn't believe me because I was a commoner telling him that commoning was really important for the forest. So with our social media training, we didn't just involve commoners. We involved others from other organisations. And we need others to tell our story too. We need people from the Wildlife Trust to explain to people that commoning is beneficial for biodiversity. We need to tell a joint story, really. So we created a hashtag called Real New Forest. Again, stolen from Donald Trump, who's very successful at marketing. And we're telling the real story of the forest. We've also done behind-the-scenes tours. So those personal conversations, the meeting of people, is so powerful. But there's just a few of us. We have not got the time or the capacity to talk to every visitor that comes to the forest. So instead, we've done behind-the-scenes talks for Go New Forest, for New Forest Tourism Association, as they were, for local tour operators. We've done 2 sessions for National Park staff. We've done a session for the Our Past, Our Future project officers. The reason for that is that those people are disseminating information about the forest. They are neutral, really. And if they can come to us and see our small holding, we can explain to them about how the forest works, then they will share that information, but in a neutral way so that people won't say, you know, but you would say that. The other things we've done are meet the comment. We've done some walks for the general public, but it's really hard to get commoners to come along and do those things because we're all so busy. I don't think people really appreciate how hard it is. Most commoners have a day job, very often Monday to Friday, and all of our commoning happens on the evenings and at the weekends. And the shifting nature of the forest is such that it's harder and harder to common at the weekends because the forest is so busy. So finding time to gather commoners to do talks is quite tricky. So one of the things that we've really tried to promote is the skills attached to commoning. So they're much wider than animal husbandry. They include pile making. Robert was telling, I believe, Julian Glover this week about the hours and hours and days and weeks he spent in the woods with his dad making chestnut piles. All of those experiences and that knowledge of the forest is deep within the commoning community. I am so in awe of those commoners who have worked the forest all of their life. I could sit for hours and listen to them talking about the places in the forest. There are places that we ride regularly, and Robert will take me on a path and say, well, have you been down this way before? And have you been over this bridge? And he takes me to places I've never been before and I would never find again. But he just knows it. And there are so many powerful, deeply knowledgeable commoners, and I don't think their experience is celebrated enough or shared. So those conversations we had with commoners, these were the 6 main themes that came out, and pride was one of them. And we mentioned pride earlier this morning, and I thought that was interesting. Commoners have a strong sense of place. They're really passionate about passing on knowledge to the next generation. They have a strong community. And they talked a lot about their social lives, the fact that their whole lives are woven into commoning and into the forest, But with that one, there was a real sense of sadness and a sense of loss, that somehow the forest community is changing, that the commoning community is changing. The working forest is really important. And going forward, looking at the changes that are coming with Brexit, it's really important that commoners are able to continue producing ponies, cattle for sale. That's at the heart of what they do. And change is ever present in commoning. Always has been, always will be. My grandparents were Londoners. They moved to the forest because they fell in love with it, and they had a herd of dairy cattle. There are no herds of dairy cattle out on the forest today. This is one of the phrases that I really enjoyed from the project. Commoning is one big family, falling out, making up, and getting on with the job. Now, it's not one big family. It's lots of different groups and lots of different places. There's a very distinct north-south divide within commoning, so people often talk about the forest, but actually the forest is broken down into much smaller groups and places, and different families belonging to those different areas. With our social media, the biggest thing that came out was this idea of fear. That by speaking out and talking about commoning, we would be attacked. That people would knock us down. And that idea of who are the Commoners Defence Association? Why do you call yourselves the New Forest Commoners Defence Association? And that's because commoners have defended the forest for generations. But that sense of defence comes with a sense of fear. You know, are we going to have it taken away from us? But what we learned was, by saying nothing, we were creating a void. So instead of a strong, positive voice of commoning, others were having their say. And many, many myths abound in commoning, the overgrazing one being a really interesting one, which has been discussed, at length this morning and will continue to be discussed. But when you read the Leamington Times, any letter that comes from someone who doesn't know very often uses the words, but commoners are overgrazing the forest. Why should we support them? And as a commoner, that's really upsetting because we are deeply connected to the forest and we care passionately about it. So we started to work on knowing, liking and trusting commoners. And we did that through our own social media channels. So we tried to lead by example. And interestingly, mine is @Cuffnells. So after the conversation this morning, that's quite interesting. So Robert's grandparents had Cuffnells Farm and rented it. But before they had it, my grandparents rented Cuffnells Farm. So amazing that someone who tried to bring commoning down, today we're remembering that, the name of Cuffnells. And again, we're using the Real New Forest hashtag. Now, I knew that you wouldn't be able to see this very easily. This is something called askthepublic.com. So you can go on to askthepublic.com and type in the New Forest, and it'll give you all the top Google searches for the New Forest. So if you're doing any social media and you want to get to people, you look at the questions they're asking and you give them the answer to their question. Now, it might be that they're asking, where can I camp in the New Forest? So we can reply, where can you camp in the New Forest? Well, don't forget, don't feed the ponies if you're camping in the New Forest. When we started this 18 months ago, commoning was not mentioned in any of those questions. And I was absolutely delighted to find yesterday that who are the commoners is now in that list for the New Forest. Magic. So that's really, really good. But it's interesting, the questions. Can I feed the ponies? Where can I feed the ponies? Are regular questions. And so there are lots of problems that we're trying to deal with in the forest. So this is our Twitter feed. We've now got 739 followers on Twitter. It's not a huge amount. But the interesting thing is this is where others can work together. And today I've already had 2 conversations with Twitter friends in the room people I've never met before, but who I regularly converse with, and whose messages we share. So it doesn't matter that I've only got 700 followers. If the National Park Authority, who have 30,000 followers, retweet one of my messages, then my message is getting out to a really wide audience. It's also really important. I had lots of conversations with the National Park Authority about what they were saying about commoning. And the reality was they weren't saying a lot. And when I talked to them more about it, they said, yes, well, we're a bit scared. What are you scared of? Saying the wrong thing. Because commoners will come down on us like a ton of bricks if we say the wrong thing. Well, saying nothing is as dangerous as saying the wrong thing sometimes. But by having our own voice, by creating our own feeds, the National Park Authority don't have to worry about saying the wrong thing because we're saying it. All they're doing is retweeting it. And that can work on all of the social media platforms. Tom is another of the Year in the Forest stars. It's done him some good. But his Instagram feed and his Twitter feeds are really, really good. He's got a lot of followers. He's also taken the Farmers of the UK feed, which has got, again, a big 30,000 following. It follows a different farmer each week, all the way through the year. And interestingly, a lot of journalists now follow different people so that they can get their stories. So again, it's how do we get our good news stories out into the public domain? So here's an example of us doing a Meet the Commoners event. We did a family event at Bewley Road. Interestingly, back to Twitter, a slightly controversial Twitterer came on our walk, which I thought was really good. We've got behind-the-scenes events, and our final piece is our exhibition, which opens on Saturday at the New Forest Centre. And it would be amazing if you would come along. Fingers crossed it works. But the idea is that as you walk past the images, a voice will talk to you. And we've got lots of different commoners that I've recorded over the year telling you about their lives and hopefully revealing a few of the secrets of the forest. So a final slide. When we're interpreting commoning, whether that's in the New Forest or further afield, it's really important to give commoners the confidence to tell their own story. It builds partnerships, so it's not just about a few pictures on a wall, it's about building relationships. It can underpin behaviour change. So ultimately, a lot of the conversations in the forest about commoning revolve around animal accidents and feeding the ponies, or not feeding the ponies. But in order for that behaviour change to happen, we need people to understand commoning. So going back to the question of, if we give the power to the people, they'll make the wrong decision. Actually, I think it's up to us to make sure that everyone who lives in the forest and who visits the forest understand what makes it so special. We're not all bad people. There are not hundreds and hundreds of bad people coming to the forest. They're all good people and they are all well-intentioned, but sometimes they make poorly informed decisions. And so together, rather than as all separate different organisations saying different things, I think together we need to start talking about what makes the forest special and how people can enjoy it responsibly. And there is a lovely legacy to the project in that we're quite enjoying social media, I have to say, and I was a complete anti-social media person before this. We're quite enjoying telling our story, and that will continue. And long term, we hope to turn the exhibition into a travelling exhibition by putting it into a cattle box and towing it around all of the estates of Southampton and sharing our precious forest. And my final point, drip, drip, drip. I'm not the first person to talk about commoning. I won't be the last. There are dozens of people who've come before me who've done an amazing job sharing knowledge about the forest, and there will be people who come after me. But drip, drip, drip is the only way to inform people and educate them. Commoning isn't just about the forest. We go beyond the forest sometimes, and this is us getting our straw. So we're moving on to beyond the forest now. Ta-da.